Sacred activism comes from the being's core gnosis, aligned with universal law. It is anchored not in the personality, but in the soul. It is the act of living the sacred, the feeding and nurturing of the divine spark within. From the attention given to the inner divine, the being becomes alert and resonant with the needs of others, for seen in the other is self. Once that light is turned on and the bond is realized deep in the core, higher guidance prevails. The soul dips into the well of the being's frame of reference, and all experience is viewed, felt, and understood from the vantage point of harmonic resonance. A deepening fire begins to burn, and the being must act, must take up the gauntlet for harmony and justice. Now comes the crucial moment. Action must come from the deep place of universal order. It must arise from the seabed of the great ocean of resolve that is pulled by the tides of the monad, the greater soul force. If this calling is not yet signaled in the being, only stillness is to be found therein. This sacred pause is awaiting the celestial chords to surge out of the heart like waves upon the sea. One must realize this stillness as the sacred before the act. When the signal comes, it is likened unto a voice in the wilderness, for it plumbs the depths of the being, seeking anchor where there is no safe harbor. The being must rise up and embrace the signal and bring it home. The fire that burns within engenders resolve to follow the sacred through the chaos and yet keep the signal pure, the intent mindful, and the being alert. There is no other roadmap but that divine fire guiding the being onward. This is the way the sacred action is taken. It may be a small thing in the eyes of the world, yet a mountain pushes it up out of the morass and calls to the hearts of the masses. Unseen for what it is, it does not threaten the sleeper, but sweetly calls that slumbering being to the warmth of the fire within the soul. Yet there is also the great sword of truth. It cuts into the ages of stagnation, the crusting of illusion and fear. For those who will not come to the smoldering hearth, they shall feel the pain of their own choosing until the sword of the soul opens them up to the light of day. This sword no human hand wields. It is tempered within the very hearts of the blind and deaf. The sacred does not act against, but for. It creates an environment for those who strive to deny, a place where no denial is possible.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blue Star Rising, Exemplar Awakening. This is Michael Henry Dunn, and with our esteemed colleague, Reverend Maia. Hey there, Maia, good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning, afternoon, but no, we are definitely in the afternoon. Do not lead me down another path here.
No, I'm sorry, I'm splitting the timeline. It's a Mandela effect.
Yes.
Now, this time, usually we're a mile or so apart in the San Luis Valley in Colorado, but I happen to be in a different state. I'm in a completely different state. Now I'm in California.
It's a completely different state.
Yeah, which is a completely different state these days, especially. So welcome, everyone. And today we are going to share with you one of the subjects that is most dear to my heart, actually. which is Sacred Activism. And with the subtitle from the video that Reverend Maia has created.
You just saw.
We just saw, which of course, the video that you just saw, the way we're going to edit it and present it to you, it shall be so. The Sacred Activism, the Sword of Truth, which of course with the restoration of chivalry and the Johannine Templar stream is very important to us, and that the work of Andrew Harvey, which has been such an inspiration to so many, and especially to me, it goes right to the heart of that. So Maia, before we began, you were sharing with me that simple as it is, short as it is, that this video we've just seen goes to a deeper place, that what you receive from Thoth on this is going to a different, deeper place, a deeper, different perspective than we're used to thinking of with this subject. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yes. In a way, this is going to be sort of difficult to start off on because it is in such a deep place and there's so many dimensions to it. It's almost like a self-revelatory transmission from Thoth. In other words, every person is going to see something a little different. Well, some things are the same, but it's addressing a very deep place in the individual. And as individuals, we cognate a little differently, and we're on a different level of where what we need to be receiving at the time. And that may be true for all videos, but in messages, but I just think that's especially true with this one, that it's a very personal message to each person. It seems like that to me. And that said, it also, it addresses a very large cosmic perspective. It's Thoth speaking about it from the state of his awareness rather than ours. He's gifting it to us. He's not trying to speak above our heads, but at the same time, it allows us to see through, I say, his eyes, through the higher being of this entity that it happened to incarnate in several lifetimes on this planet. But we're really looking through the eyes of an illumined one, which is beyond physical eyes. And to see it from that perspective means that we have to embrace that we are infinite beings. And in that process, we're also dimensional beings, that we cannot apprehend our own sacred activism in helping ourselves and others on this planet unless we embrace our dimensional being to some degree. We can't just say, well, I am so-and-so and I'm walking down this straight line and I'm going to help people along the way. Yes, that's a good thought and a good deed. But this is talking about something much further. It's speaking about allowing yourself to expand in a toroidal field, if you will, the grand torus that encompasses the hologram of the universe, and addressing and seeing where your beingness is acting on other planes and dimensions. Now, I don't mean that you have to become a seer or a guru or anything and go, oh, over here I'm doing this and over here I'm doing that. I mean, that might come up, but that's not the point. The point is that you get the expression, you get the feeling in your being. It's a core element. When your core brings in that dimensional landscape, all the beings that you are and the other dimensional experiences are now speaking to you in a heart resonance, And then you can truly act on what Thoth is speaking about as sacred activism, rather than, carrying the sign and speaking through the microphone. And not that those things aren't valuable in their place, but see, he's addressing the bigger picture. He's not saying you shouldn't be doing those things, but he's addressing the bigger picture. Because if you don't get into that space, or non-space perhaps, then all these other things that you're doing are just kind of, they might make some progress, but it's a long haul. If you get into that greater space, you allow the beings that you are on other dimensions to help the being that you are here to do the job you came here to do?
Well, this does take it to a deeper place. You know, the material from Andrew Harvey, for example, he speaks about finding that cause that breaks your heart, whatever that might be. You know, whether it's cruelty to animals or it's environmental activism, human rights activism, etc. And that cause that breaks your heart and that you cannot forget, that creates the fuel, the fire in your heart that lights up a flame of active love that needs to be nurtured through divine connection of some kind, through a sacred practice of some kind. Because otherwise, some of these causes are just so bleak and the state of things on the planet is just so tough that what happens is that activists, ordinary, kind, activated, wanting to help the world activists, they burn out. Their hearts simply break and stay broken, and their empathy becomes exhausted, and their lives become so full of stress and pain for the cause that they're doing their best to help, that unless you have a spiritual practice that anchors you in the divine, that anchors you in an awareness that it's not just you, anchors you in an awareness that in helping the other, you are helping your higher self, then you can sustain that fire, that loving fire that first stemmed from your heartbreak. But what is being brought in here comes to me as being deeper in the sense that he speaks of this stillness wherein one can actually connect with, first of all, yes, the awareness that in helping the other, you're helping yourself, but that somehow there is this magic moment when your sacred activism is somehow immersed in, absorbed by, fueled by this deep spiritual impulse from your dimensional being, as you say. And it's a subtle thing, maybe, as we talk about it, but it's such an important one. It's such a potentially powerful one because we, as you say, we might, do some good in this direction, do some good in that direction, and that's all good. And it's good and kind and brave and noble and praiseworthy. And yet, for those of us who are immersing in sacred science, are seeking the guidance of Gaia, the guidance of the Ascension Timeline, the guidance of what is the most powerful lever that we can seize that will be the game changer, the cosmic game changer, that our souls are most in alignment with. And it's subtle, but it seems to me to be crucial. It seems to me, that our subtitle here on Blue Star Rising is Applied Sacred Science for the Global Crisis. Okay, how do we apply it? Out of what depth of alignment with spirit do we apply it? Is this making sense? Am I resonating with where you're coming from on this?
Yes, indeed. And also, as you were speaking, Thoth was sort of chiming in. He gave me a picture. And I said, well, where is this from? And he said, this is from a very ancient, I don't know, story. I don't know the words to call it. I don't know if it's true or not. It's like a presentation to demonstrate. But it wasn't one that he just made up on the fly. It's something he says that comes from the ancient past. So I saw this, I would call him a monk, okay, in an orange robe. So it couldn't have been too long ago, but I saw this monk-like person in an orange robe, although maybe they had orange robes in Atlantis and Mu, and he did have a shaved head. And he was standing by a small roadway. When I say roadway, a little gravel, or not gravel, a little dirt road, a trail. Let's call it a trail. and he was selling apples. Not selling them. Well, he was selling. There was this little box, little barrel, or little, not like a basket. That's the word, basket. A little basket of shriveled up apples. I mean, they weren't really rotten or anything, but they didn't look too good. A few little apples, just a few. And he was like, and he looked very poverty stricken. He looked very thin and hungry, and he was barefooted. And I say he had a robe on, but it was, it was very homespun and everything. And so here comes this stranger down the path, and he's saying, would you buy one of my apples? And the guy looks at the apples and goes, but he goes, oh God, he really needs the money, and I don't want to offend him about the apple, so I'll buy an apple. So he buys an apple, and he's there with this apple thinking, the guy will leave and I can throw it away. But the guy just stands there. I mean, the little monk or whatever, like, I want to see if you really like my apple. And he's like, huh. So he takes a bite of the apple and swallows it. And immediately he sees this beauty of this man that's standing in front, not this scrawny, it's the same man, but he looks really nice, and he has this flowing robe, and he has this beautiful long hair, and the apples in the basket are all gold. I'm getting chills because I'm just now hearing this story along with you. And the man that just ate that, he just took a bite of it. He looks down in the rest of the apple, it's all gold. But not gold like, metal, but, a golden hue. And he says, so the monk or whatever says to him, he says, you are blessed. And he said, take the rest of this apple with you and choose sparingly when you bite into it. And he smiles and he just disappears. Now, whether that's a real story or not, I don't know. Maybe it's a metaphoric story of some kind, but that's what Thoth showed me. He just showed it to me. Never seen it before in my life. And I love it. I think it's pretty cool.
Wow. Well, so that came in as I was speaking just now.
Yes.
And how do you think that, how did it flow out of what I was saying? Do you have a sense of the connection?
Okay, yes, I do. I forgot that part. Well, because he said to me first, and it's not like I'm not listening to you, Michael. This is going on another level. I can't explain it. It's just coming into the field as you're speaking.
Yeah.
And it's like I saw the whole story in detail while you were talking. I got the energy gist. I saw the man, the apple go. And then as I'm talking to you, then it's, the sequence is being filled in. So what I got before that was that the simplest of acts can encompass this universal dynamism that we're speaking of. In other words, you don't have to be a mystic or a scholar of spiritual knowledge, or you could be the simplest of people walking down the path, but a good person, and you take an action that it seems so simple in helping someone, and yet because your heart is aligned in just the right way to receive that apple, regardless of its demeanor. And you receive it with trust and faith that it's not going to poison you, because you're doing it in the spirit of good. And when you do that, really coming from heart, not from delusion or self-grandeur or anything like that, then the apple becomes golden, and you really see with your inner heart what the task you are performing on some level. You don't see a gold monk or something, but there's a reciprocity. Maybe not even in the first moment, but you might think, oh, well, I did a good deed, and I'm on my way. But it matters, and it comes back to you in a profound way. Some point in your life when you most need it. It says, take the bites out of the apple when you most need it.
Yeah, that to me, it goes to the willingness to do something humble, whatever it might be, that is yours to do. It doesn't have to be great or glorious or famous. It can be humble. I mean, it brings to mind a story I heard one time from a monk that I knew, that I used to cook lunch for. And we were talking about practicing the presence and just how one can create devotional habits in the day that help keep you in tune. And he told me about this one monk that he knew in the monastery there who made it a practice that if he was walking along the path on the grounds and happened to see even a tiny little piece of paper that was on the ground, or some little bit of refuse, that that he would say, I'm doing this for God. It's a humble little thing. I will go and pick it up. I will go and put it in a trash basket or whatever. And this is going to be every time I think of that, rather than, oh, somebody else will get it. I'll go and pick that up with the consciousness of it's just a little service that I'm doing for God. And he told me that he knew this monk personally, and that one day it was at the end of a really long, hard day, and I guess this monk was working in the garden, and it was exhausting, and it was a hot day, and his muscles were hurting, and he's coming back, like to the kitchen and hoping, gosh, I hope there's some decent leftovers, whatever. And he's coming in, and he happens to glance, and they're like 10 yards away. There's an old piece of paper on the ground. And the monk was like, okay, well, not this time. Not this time. I'm too tired. I'm too hungry. A piece of paper is whatever. And he's about to turn into the kitchen door, and then he catches himself and says, no, this is a devotional habit. It's a humble, small thing I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And so he walks wearily over to pick up the tiny little piece of paper, and he turns it over, and it's the face of Christ.
Oh, beautiful. I love that story.
Yeah. So when we talk about coming from an awareness of our connection and being willing to do whatever we are prompted to, that little act, that little, it's that final piece of love in action that turns the tipping point of activated hearts on planet Earth towards the ascension ignition for all of us. Who knows? There's billions of us.
There are many ways this can happen. There's the direct giving, of course, that's the final finale, but there are these other things like the experience of your monk. I have a story too that happened to me the other day. First of all, see, I don't really get out, especially now with things as they are. He brings me food and stuff because I have very hard difficulty breathing through a mask. And so anyway, so I haven't been out anywhere. Well, that's not true. We went to the stupa and a few things, but mostly not. Anyway, so what I try to do every day, at least while it's warm. When it's cold, I have to walk around the living room. But I go out and I walk down the gravel driveway. It's a short driveway. And I go back and forth and back and forth. And, but while I'm doing this, I'm talking to the trees and, blessing them and just, blessing the day and looking up at the sky. Sometimes I just stand there, with my eyes closed. But there's a lot of, this country over here where Michael and I live has the most beautiful rocks you have ever seen. I mean, I've been a lot of places, but I've never seen rocks like they have here. And they're conglomerates. They have all these different things all mixed in. So the gravel, even though it's been gravelized and it's little teeny tiny pieces, is made up of all of these different rocks. So what I do almost every time I walk is I'm walking along, and I don't do it right away. I'm just walking back and forth. Then I have this feeling, and I go and I see a little tiny stone. It just calls me. It doesn't have to be particularly pretty, and it just calls me, and I pick it up. It's warm from the sun, and I just hold it, and I bless it. And when I bless the stone, I feel like I'm blessing, the terrain and everything. And I'll walk a while, and maybe I'll just sort of toss it, and then I'll pick up another. Usually I do 3 stones. I don't know why, it just works that way. So here I am the other day, and I'm walking along And with my, I haven't done any stone picking up yet. And I think I'd even almost forgotten. And I wasn't in a particularly good mood. I was kind of like depressed. And so I'm walking along and the sun is shining, and all of a sudden on the gravel, there's this brilliant spark. I mean, not just a little glimmer, it's almost blinding. It's like this, and it's like magic, and I go, my God, what is that? I think I have seen, a vision or something. And then I realize it's coming from a stone. I'm a stone, I mean, a little tiny. And so I walk over to it and it keeps just beaming at me. And when I bend over and look at it, the stone couldn't be more than like that big, but in the center of it, or slightly, there's a perfectly square insert of a silver rock, like a pyrite. It's probably pyrite. And it's just perfect, though. It's just like somebody just took their finger and made a mark in something soft and just set it perfectly in there and just, put it just right in there. And so I was holding this stone and I thought, this stone was for me. It was calling me. It was waking me up from my Maiaism, and it was signaling to me, because I have developed a relationship with the gravel in my driveway, but I have,
Yeah.
I can feel it. So I thought, well, I probably should throw it back, but geez, I'd like to keep it. Is it okay if I keep it? And I got to keep it. So it's on the altar. It's so little, you couldn't even see it on the Zoom, or I'd show you. So anyway, that's my story, but it's kind of like that. It's like, it was a signal for me. And when you talk to nature, when you talk to your pussycats like I do, and they're such beautiful little beings, all of these things, it collects that energy. So I'm not doing a good deed in the moment, but I'm doing a good deed because I'm doing a good deed for myself, for my kitties if I'm talking to them, for nature if I'm talking to it. Those are all good deeds. And that's all part of the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's reminding me of a passage from Jesus Christ Superstar, the rock musical, for those who remember it or having seen it, where the Pharisees and the high priests are rebuking Jesus because of his noisy followers as he's entering into Jerusalem on the donkey, and they're all praising, Hosanna, Hosanna to the Son of David. And the priests, tell the rabble to be quiet. And Jesus sings, let's see if I can remember, he goes, why waste your breath moaning at the crowd? Nothing can be done to stop the shouting. If every tongue was still, the noise would still continue. The rocks and stones themselves would start to sing, right? So it's like
I love
that.
it.
Yeah, the rocks and stones themselves, the very stones will cry out his glory, right?
Yeah.
So there was this little stone.
It was crying out the glory. Yes.
Yeah, you gotta love that. Wow. Well, the question that the video was posing, not so much a question, I guess, but for those of us who are tuning in, and I think, the people who watch Blue Star Rising every week are tuning in. They're not your typical audience. There's seekers and who are tuned into sacred science and the power of it, and what's coming through in the Thoth extreme. And what keeps coming up for me, I'm seeking, what's the game changer? What's the most powerful lever that I can help pull with others in community that will make the greatest difference, will alleviate the most suffering, lead to freedom and healing for Gaia, for humanity. And it's coming in. I mean, each one of us needs to think about our own gifts, our own heart's desire, our higher heart's desires of love and service. And I've got different skill sets and I've used them joyfully here and there throughout my life, but I just happen to be at a point where it's like, all right, I want to bring it all together. I want to serve spirit most powerfully, most joyfully, most effectively right now, because push has come to shove. Well, when push comes to shove, when the dirt hits the fan, it has. I think it's safe to say.
Yes.
And so, and each one of us, that's going to be something different for each one of us. I mean, for me, and for the beautiful souls that we're working with these days, when I think of the quantum logic and interactive and the power of that, the alliance that it represents with the inner earth, and and with higher beings, the Holy Grail Vortex protocol, and our brothers and sisters in the Temple of Saqqara, that there seems to be, when you take in what crop circle has just shown up,
Mm.
the synchronicity of the crop circles is becoming mind-blowing. I mean, it was always mind-blowing, but now there's an alliance, there's a plan, there's a ever more powerful resonance that is being felt very widely. And so I just want to encourage all of us who happen to tune into Blue Star Rising. I mean, for many of us, maybe it's as simple as your version of going to pick up a little stone that's sparkling at you, or some little piece of paper on a path that I'm going to help keep this clean and holy. And maybe it's about tuning in to the Quantum Logica project. Maybe it's about learning how to do the Holy Grail Vortex protocol. Maybe it's, for us in the Johannine Templar stream, learning more about this code as a way of life. It's simple. We all know it in one way or another, but within the stream that we are endeavoring to embody in practice. Because, the code of chivalry, well, hey, look it up online. You want the Templar code, or you want, various versions of Knights Hospitaller, or something out of the Grail myths and the Arthurian legends. Okay, it's all beautiful and inspiring. Or, the Kshatriya caste, the beautiful chivalry of either the Saracens or, in Rajasthan, the Rajput warriors. There's many beautiful expressions of the code of chivalry. And we have come to and are offering that expression of this code that is uniquely of this stream, and that we'll be sharing with you before too very long, in the next few days, a talk that I gave at the Temple of Saqqara conference in Michigan a couple of weeks ago. And I was able to bring the consecrated sword of the Johannine Templars to that gathering, and a chivalry elevation ceremony was given to a great, beautiful soul, Mary Harvey, who helped found that work. And so the talk is about the code, the unique Johannine Templar expression of that code. And so we welcome you to experience that. We'll have that up to share with you within the next few days, because that's the expression of sacred activism that we do our best to embody. And I think was just so beautifully expressed, Maia, by the video. And it has your customary wonderful artistry to it, of these beautiful images and music. Is there anything else that's coming in for you as I'm speaking here that wants to be amplified or shared on this?
Yes. Well, of course, as you mentioned, we are in exceptionally difficult times right now. And this is a time when more than ever, we are being called to truly embody that code. And when we're walking down that path, we need to be open and receptive to helping those who maybe we might have an inner feeling to shun for whatever reason. That doesn't mean that you don't use your wisdom and how you apply your compassion and your discernment and how you reach out. But the compassion itself has to be infinite and uncompromising. It has to be given fully and completely, unconditionally. That's the word I'm saying. But you can give unconditionally, and at the same time you can discern, be discerning how you give, and what is the experience within that accompanies that giving, and what is the outer knowing that accompanies that giving. So you're not doing so blindly. You have a basis for understanding how you're interacting with that person or thing or situation that you're giving to. I say that because, and Thoth has prompted me to say that, because right now on the planet, black seems white and white seems black and gray seems purple. You know, I mean, I'm not talking about what we're seeing with our eyes. I'm not talking about races and stuff like that. I'm talking about energy. It's like, well, this mask is being worn over here. When I take that mask off, is it what's going to show underneath it? You know, and it's like I have been speaking to certain people along my path of people that are coming to me. They're going like, well, what the heck? How do I discern what? You know, I've never been in a situation like this before, and they're being forced into situations where they have to make decisions that would affect their livelihood and their physical lives. Livelihood on one side, perhaps dangerous to their life, not only currently but ongoing, and they have to make a decision there. All of these things are coming up, and this is not off the topic, because what Thoth is speaking about in this Sacred Activism video is really, that's the subtitle. Title is the Sword of Truth. And, you know, the image of the woman holding up the sword and saying, this sword is actually tempered, not by the aware person, not by the one that's got it kind of on the path, and it's tempered by the blind and the deaf. It's tempered by those who have yet to raise the sword, and yet there's that huge struggle of spirit inside them because they haven't. And that is where that tempering comes. And when it bursts free from one here, one there, in whatever way it does, this is the light under the bushel that's shining brightly, and it offers another person to step forward and open up and accept the sword. This is the process that's going on right now. Ideally, we would like to see everyone on the planet receive this transfiguration. I don't believe that will occur, not in this old earth, not from what I've received and the way I interpret that in my own inspirited being. But we are in need of the 100th monkey, of enough souls igniting that fire within. And they may come from people that have been, you know, serving us the lies for a long time. Maybe not the top of the heap, but those that have been doing service to that. And they suddenly wake up. And those are the people that are going to hand us the tempered sword. And then those of us who are waiting for that command can then activate it. I don't know, I'm speaking in, you know, metaphors here, but I don't really know any other way to express it.
All right. So what's coming in for me as I'm listening to you on this is we're talking about people whom we might otherwise shun or ignore, mm-hmm. are having an inner struggle that, as you say, the tempering of the sword of truth is taking place within the minds and hearts of those who may currently be blind or deaf, or they're struggling to see and hear. Mm-hmm. Right? And yeah. That it's this discernment that we got to call in right now, with not casting our pearls before swine in trying to change minds that are just closed. It's like, yeah. Don't waste your time with people who have made a choice and are not open, do not want to hear, have judged you. You're, you know, fine, okay, on your way, you've made your choice. Blessings on you. I'm hopefully will be in tune enough to be moved to speak or share with someone who is open. But it sounds like there's a subtler level of this that you're addressing, where it's, those people within whom an inner struggle is going on, who at some point on their own will have a breakthrough and suddenly present an expression of the sort of truth.
Yes, but also these are people who are on the edge of breaking through, and maybe all they need from you is a loving, not judgmental, a loving moment. Not, oh, you got to do this or this. Did you see this? You ought to read that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this loving exchange. And if they ask you a question, you answer them truthfully, but briefly. That kind of thing. Just this loving exchange. Now, if they're not open for that, as you said, it's not going to go that way. But there are people that are coming forward. They're beginning to go, wait a minute, this isn't working. We're not getting all that money we said we were going to get. And, all these things that have been promised them. And they're going, well, maybe this isn't quite what I thought it was. But at the same time, they're not ready to really open up and receive the light. I'm not talking about a belief system even, although a belief system is obviously involved here. It goes beyond that. So if one of those persons is in your experience and you feel that you could just give them a loving exchange, not trying to convince them of anything, not even bringing up the subject, just a loving exchange, and that is reciprocated, that can open up, it can, delicately, it's delicate surgery here, can open up that potential that can allow them to hand you the tempered sword, the sword they've tempered through their own agony and the indecision and pain and suffering, and yet they've still been holding on to that sword, haven't they? That's still there.
Yeah.
So they give it to you, and now it's a transforming experience for you as well as for them.
Yeah, it's reminding me of a poem by Paramahansa Yogananda called "The Noble New." The Noble New, and I'll just share it with you right now, actually, because near the end of it, it's a short poem. It addresses that moment that we're speaking of reaching out to someone with just the right intuitively guided words, one hopes. So this is the noble new. Sing songs that none have sung, think thoughts that ne'er in brain have rung, walk in paths that none have trod, weep tears as none have shed for God, give peace to all to whom none other gave. Claim him your own who is everywhere disclaimed. Love all with love that none have felt, and brave the battle of life with strength unchained.
That's beautiful. Now, would you tell me again where that came from?
Yeah, that is, it's called The Noble New, N-E-W. It's from a book called The Law of Success by Paramahansa Yogananda.
Oh, I knew Yogananda.
Yeah, so it's a poem of Yogananda's. So that it always touches me that, claim him your own who's everywhere disclaimed. Give peace to all to whom none other gave. Love all with love that none have felt. So I just wanted to offer that as a
perfect. It's exactly what I was feeling. What I was feeling from Thoth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a time, as they say, a time that tries men's souls, but it really tries us. It's trying in a good way, because it's allowing us the opportunity to have massive inner spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm.
Because in times of ease,
we
just take it easy.
Right. We'd be chilling.
Yeah. And Thoth was showing me also somewhere along the line when one of us was speaking. He said, the ancients of, let's go back to Lemuria, for instance, or Mu, as they like to call it. I know some people say there was a Mu and Lemuria, but no, Thoth says there was just one and it was Mu. But anyway, in the first stages, there was just no disharmony. I mean, there just wasn't any, and yet there was the energy of the planet was shifting, and there was causing a certain erosion in consciousness. But they had been so blessed in their loving light of the lotus as they came down the stem of the higher awareness to the lesser, that it took a while before they went, oh, something's not right in paradise, and as that progressed, there came a time when those who had the love lights really strong in their being reached out to the ones who were becoming lost, and the ones that were becoming lost said, we reject you. Your place, this plan that is supposed to take care of us is not taking care of us. So we reject those who are still loyal to it. I'm putting it in basic words, but that's what they meant. And that was the renting of the veil, because in the wrong direction, because the earth the spiritual consciousness of the planet could not maintain its frequency when so many souls, or at least a large enough amount of souls, literally cursed their mother. And I'm not just speaking of Gaia, but the birth that they had experienced of the soul into the body and the soul into the planet. So this was and this was even referred to historically in Atlantis, in the first stages of Atlantis, as the Great Curse. This is what Thoth is showing right now. I've never heard it before. And so this, for a while, because Atlantis Mu went on for a long time before it got to that stage. And then Atlantis sort of rebuilt a little bit and got things going. And it went on for a lesser, but still long time before it, it went down not only in the sea, but in consciousness. So at the first stage of Atlantis, they held that light. We must never reach the state that we were in with the Great Curse. And unfortunately, in a way they did. Well, they did. I mean, there was a terrible, separating of the ways again. And so, but it wasn't like a second Great Curse, because the first one was big enough. So it was just an adjunct to it. It was like, it had not ended yet. It's like a serpent. It withering, and the serpent comes up and it goes down and say, well, we've seen the last of him. And then the other part of the serpent comes up, and goes down again. So it's all part of the same sine wave that had lost its divine harmonic. So in time, it seemed like Mu did this, and then thousands of years later, it came back in Atlantis, but actually it was the same sine wave. It was the same disharmonic gesture that was triggering both places. And this is why we had in Lemuria, Mu, we had the desecration of the heaven houses when Melchizedek left, and everything went to heck, and the priestesses were murdered, and some of them had to go into the inner earth and other places with the loyal priests. And you think, well, boy, that was terrible, but that's the end of that. No, it came back and went through the same thing again in Atlantis. Maybe a little lesser, but it was still there. So what we need to learn from that is that we're on a sine wave. We're on a wave that is started a disharmonic gesture, okay? It's like you're doing these beautiful sound frequencies in sand. You know how that is with the Tibetan bowls, of woo, and all of a sudden there's a disharmonic sound, and the sand just scatters. Well, if you were just in one tiny little part of that sand heap, you would have your scattering here, and you think, well, that's the end of that, but it's still scattering over here, and you can't even know it. So if you're incarnated back over here, then you get the tail end of it on the other side of the scattering of the disharmony. And that is what happened. And so he's saying to me now that that's what we're still experiencing. We are not creating a new disharmonic. We're experiencing the tail of the serpent. The first part of the serpent, went through its thing, and then another part, Atlantis, and then we had other things happen, like in Egypt, and we had other experiences. One of the biggest ones was, of course, the World War I and World War II, because of the way it happened and the undercurrents of it. And of course, the whole Nazi thing and the concentration camps and horrible things that happened there. And then, of course, there was always just injustice to humanity, just not as cataloged by our historians, but that was a crux of it. And so what Thoth is telling me right now is that what we're experiencing now is another ring on the serpent spiral that is matching up, just like you're in astrology, the planets align. Well, it's matching up with the whole situation that caused World War II. So we're literally matching up right in sight with that. And does that mean that we're doomed to have another type of situation? No, because we're in a different time. We have different souls, well, not all different souls incarnated, but a different mix. And we also have a greater ability to receive consciousness because of where the planet is in its process of its own evolution. We're much closer to the ascension aspect of it. So all of these things figure in. I know this is a long story, but I'm going to end it soon. And so what he's saying is that now, because we're lined up that way, I'm sorry, that's my cat. While we're lined up there like that, we have the moment now to find that alchemical transference of energy, so we can stop this indulation. We don't have to have the little tip of the tail come up. We have the opportunity to seize the moment and disrupt that current, not by cutting the serpent in half. That's a violent act, but by changing the frequency. And when we change the frequency, really change the frequency, all that is undone. And it just can't, it's gone. So that's the moment we're in right now, of the changing of the frequency, which brings me, if I may continue for a moment, to quantum logic and interactive. Now, it's not the only thing I know, but it's what I'm involved in, okay? And we're working with frequencies that Thoth is giving us and lining through the 9010 cubes with planetary experience. And they are working much more than we are through those corridors to create new frequency patterns, but they can only do it through our DNA vibration, because they haven't, this is not their world in that sense. We have to be the ones that they work through. And I'm sure that holds as a universal law and other things that they're doing that I have no idea, but that are involved with this frequency change on the planet. And that's what we need more than anything. And that's what they're helping us with. End of story.
Well, that, is what we always try to bring understanding around to when we share here, is, and we know it's a crisis. We know things are bleak in many ways. And to know that, yes, we're seeing a remanifestation of these old patterns, as you describe, and it's this sine wave that, still rolling through the timeline, and, the the murder and repression of the priestesses in the heaven houses, and then again in Atlantis, and then you bring it down to modern day, and there's, like the murder of Hypatia, and then the downward turn there, and the Cathars, at 700 years after that, being repressed and not merely repressed but massacred. That the time returns, only it's different. The tail of the serpent, the time returns. This is a moment when grace can flow in a stronger, clearer way, is my sense. I think that's what I hear you saying, that
There's greater potential, the greater potential.
Yeah, much greater potential. And that's why these little things, these little moments of grace, these little gestures that each of us can make, or if you feel called, to explore participating with us in sacred science or the quantum cream logica, or connecting with the Holy Grail Vortex protocol, that invitation is open to you, because you happen to be one of the souls who happens to have tuned in here to this particular stream. Obviously, we're not the only. There are many channels of grace on the planet right now doing beautiful, sacred, important work that's helping turn the tide. So We
So,
welcome
and
your
furthermore,
input.
you are tuned in. You are tuned in, not just us.
Right. Yeah, you're tuned in to your own connection, as you described in the video, right? Your own awakening to trans-dimensional, your own unique trans-dimensional reality, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. Well, it feels like to me that this might be a good closure place today.
Okay.
And so as usual, we just want to let everybody remember that Maya does offer sessions, and there's the link below. If you feel moved to donate to help us do all this work, we're very grateful. Donation link is there. Maya's portal, pardon, her new website, which is beautifully unified, is there. So with that, Maya, do you have any last message or?
Well, no, I guess not. Just, just keep loving. No matter what happens, just keep on loving.
That's it. Love is all you need. All right. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Blue Star Rising. Namaste. God bless us, everyone. We'll see you next time.